Auburn football has been filled with a lot of questions in this postseason for them in 2021, and one of the final pieces of those questions and puzzles has been, where will Bo Nix end up? He's now announced his destination after deciding to transfer from Auburn football. Let's talk about why he made this decision and put this topic to bed. Welcome to the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. Our content here and on our podcast network may tend to be Auburn sports heavy, but if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. If you're new to the channel, please be sure to subscribe so you never miss any content. Thank you to members of our booster club like Kevin Nelson, who help produce videos like this. Let me go ahead and just get some of this stuff out of the way. I know a lot of you are like, why are you even talking about this, Kyle? He's not at Auburn anymore. Well, he is a big part of Auburn history. Bo Nix leaving Auburn football for Oregon football. So we're going to just talk about this one last time to put it to bed. And I know some of you are ready to move on to things that are more important to Auburn, but I think it is important to close this chapter altogether. The more and more I look at this decision for Bo to go to Oregon, while I think it's a little perplexing at the very outset of the news breaking, I think it makes a lot of sense for him, and I'm going to give you 5 reasons why I think it does. Now listen, there's a lot of you out there, Auburn fans, that don't like Bo Nix. Trust me, we heard you, we get it. That's very apparent. So I would hope that you could, if you're watching this video, be reasonable about this, be constructive in your criticism, because we are putting this to bed for one final time. The main point of all these reasons for him leaving and going to Oregon that I'm going to bring up have to do with him furthering his career going to the NFL. And your first thing you're going to say is, he's not an NFL quarterback. Well, that's your opinion, and usually your opinions are wrong, just like mine. So let's just go ahead and address that out of the way, because I know how these things typically go. Let's have one final discussion about Bo Nix and where he's heading. But before we get into those 5 reasons, I do want to address that if you'll remember, if you've been listening to this channel for quite some time, dating even back into the summer, early in the summer, I was telling you guys that I thought Bo Nix would decide to leave no matter how this final season ended up for him at Auburn. It just kind of felt right at the time, and I think the reasons were aplenty for him to decide not to come back to Auburn after this final season, and I think we'll get into some of those in this reason. Let's start off with number 1. Time for a change. Now, that's a very just general overarching reason, but it is a legitimate reason because Bo needs a more stable program. That's some real talk right now. Even with Brian Harsin and some of the momentum that he's building, they're still not that stable of a program. Bo, in his final season, likely, before he tries for the NFL, where he gets there or not will remain to be seen, he needs the most stable possible option for him. And we're going to further some of the reasons why it's a more stable option for him than Auburn as we get through some of these reasons. But that's the biggest thing, time for a change. And there's been a lot of change here, too, at Auburn. So you would think, if that's the reason for him leaving, that there's been too much turnover at head coach, at offensive coordinator, players and talent and schemes and all that kind of stuff. Well, why are you leaving? Well, if you're going to have change anyway, you want to give the best possible option. With a lot of the things that affected his play overall, his own decision-making and his own issues that he has as well, but other factors as well, I think there's better options for him over at Oregon. He's also a graduate at Auburn, which is a great feat for him and something that he's dreamed of being forever. Not just an Auburn football player, but an Auburn graduate. He's also getting married, if you didn't know that. And while I do not know when that'll actually be happening, I can see a scenario where they get married this offseason and move out to Oregon for at least 1 year as Bo tries to maximize his likely last year in college football. Reason number 2, and these next ones are probably the biggest reason why Bo went out to Oregon. But number 2 is Kenny Dillingham being the offensive coordinator at Oregon. He was just hired by Dan Lanning, who was just brought on as the new head coach for Oregon. And let me go back for a second and realize that when I was saying that in reason number 1 about it being a more stable option for him, that they're going through a coaching change too. It's a lot different when you fire a coach as opposed to a coach moves on to a likely better situation for him. So that stable foundation is already there. But back to this and the offensive coordinator, Kenny Dillingham. Yes, a new offensive coordinator for him, but not really. Bo Nix in his first season was under Kenny Dillingham and had a really great relationship by all accounts. And there was actually some rumors swirling whether Kenny Dillingham was going to come back to Auburn, and it would have been interesting to see if that had happened. Would Bo Nix have decided to stay? I think that's a big enough factor to say that's a higher likelihood than a lot of people would think. But we'll never know at this point because they're both at Oregon now. And you can see that where Bo in his first season, minus the major expectations that others had set on him and he had put on himself after his freshman year, he had proportionally his best season with Kenny Dillingham at the helm. So I think this makes a lot of sense and a big reason why he went out to Oregon. Reason number 3, the offensive line situation. It's no secret that Auburn's offensive line over the last 3-4 seasons has not been good. And listen, I hate talking bad about Auburn players, especially as a unit. And that's why I traditionally talk about these guys as a unit and not necessarily as individuals, because in a team-focused sports, it's even more of a more focused area of interest where they have to work together. And since we'll be losing a lot of them anyway, that's not a very good, stable situation. Back to point number 1. But the Oregon situation at offensive line looks pretty good overall. Now, I did some initial searching for some stats and things like that about where were they in allowing sacks and stuff like that. I didn't find anything too impressive overall, but I didn't also find anything too glaring. Some of you may be able to find some of those stats if you'd like to share them. But here's what I can tell you about this is the leadership that is probably going to be there and the experience that is going to be there. Right now, the Oregon offensive line, if things remain the same, will only be losing one player at left tackle, a redshirt senior who would be leaving regardless because he's used up all of his eligibility. He will be followed by a redshirt sophomore in all likelihood taking that position. Let's go through the rest of the offensive line. Left guard, a junior. Center, a redshirt junior. Right guard, a redshirt junior. And right tackle, a redshirt sophomore. Effectively, that makes 4 out of the 5 options at offensive line no younger than juniors, with most of them having that extra year of redshirting for experience and getting used to the program and how things need to operate at the college level. So effectively, we talk about them next year with their classifications. You're looking at a junior, a senior, a senior, a senior, and a junior, with the argument those juniors might as well be considered seniors at this point. And look at the middle of that offensive line, which arguably is where Bo received most of the pressure here at Auburn. All seniors, no question. So in terms of the offensive line, having the experience to warrant believing they can protect Bo, it is there. That is a very strong statement for Bo and what he's been through, especially with his injury. Reason number 4, championship contender. Now you may look at it and say, well, Kyle, they lost their head coach. They even lost their championship game this year. But again, that's one season. We'll see what happens in the next. My point for this is I need you to tell me who else in the Pac-12 North is going to come out of there as the champion of that division to represent in the championship game. No one else, even in a head coaching change, looks better poised than Oregon right now to do so, especially with the type of athletes that they bring in. If you couple that with who will likely be their opponent from the South, you're looking at probably a Utah or maybe even a USC with Lincoln Riley arriving there and the type of talent that he's going to attract. That's a very intriguing matchup, no matter which way you slice it, for Oregon versus USC or Utah. And depending on how all those teams fare throughout the season, could be a very high-profile matchup, which has huge implications on the playoff for 2022. This is a great opportunity for Bo to put himself not only in a market that doesn't have a ton of exposure to him, where he can really shine and not have to worry about a ton of the other stars that are in the SEC right now, but he also sets himself up in a way that maximizes his opportunities to compete not only for a divisional championship, for a conference championship, but also potentially playoff appearances or at least a great bowl game. Who knows, maybe even a championship. Highly unlikely, I think, but there's at least a better opportunity currently there than at Auburn if we're just being reasonable. Finally, the last reason, number 5, this is nowhere near Auburn. For a lot of you Bo haters out there, I know you don't want to believe that Bo and his family love Auburn, but they really do, and it comes through. You don't play an entire half almost on a broken ankle if you don't love Auburn and want this team and this program to succeed. Auburn and Bo obviously had a tumultuous time together. That's a fact. We're not going to shy away from that, but that doesn't change how most people, maybe not the most vocal ones out there, feel about Bo and his love for Auburn. And he doesn't want to do anything that hurts his alma mater because, again, he's a graduate here. There was a lot of rumblings out there whether he was going to go to maybe an Ole Miss, because apparently him and Lane Kiffin at least had some exchanges of communication. Maybe UCF back with Gus Malzahn. That would have just been a disaster, not because it wouldn't have been successful, just I didn't want that because of the hate that was going to get driven that direction. So I'm thankful that this is nowhere near the Southeast and nowhere near an opportunity for Auburn and Oregon to see each other outside of this. Obviously, there's no opportunities to see them next season. If for some reason he had to redshirt and came back for yet another year with Oregon, there's still not a regular season opportunity. It would really have to come down to a bowl matchup or even a playoff matchup. At this current juncture, I would say that Auburn's playoff opportunities are much lower than Oregon's, and I think that's fair to say. Things change, and we'll see what happens as the next season shakes out. But also, traditionally, there's no bowls that go for the SEC Pac-12 matchup, at least a lot of the time. You really only see those in the major New Year's Day or New Year's Eve bowls or the playoffs. So it would really take that for Auburn and Oregon to see each other, creating that animosity, shall we say, or opportunities for things that Bo doesn't want to have to do to hurt Auburn. Again, the thing about all of this that I think everyone needs to take into account is that Bo's decision-making process came down to how can he maximize his opportunities for an opportunity, just a chance, not saying he will be, but a chance to play in the NFL without hurting Auburn. I believe fully that went into his decision-making process, and I think that should show you what type of guy he is. So there you have it. Those are the reasons that I think Bo chose to leave Auburn and head over to Oregon. And it's time to put this one to bed. I'd love to know what you think about it in the comments section below. I hope that you will wish him great success, because there's one thing that we all can agree on when it comes to the start of the 2022 season. Oregon versus Georgia in the Chick-fil-A kickoff game. If you're not rooting for Oregon and Bo in that game, then I gotta question you as an Auburn fan. If you enjoyed this content, please help support it by smashing that like button. And if you want more content from us, be sure to hit the subscribe along with the notification bell so you never miss an upload or a live stream. There's other ways to help support our content listed in the description of this video, such as joining the E2C Network Booster Club over at Patreon, or staying here and becoming a channel member on YouTube. Both of those start at $1 a month. Thank you for tuning into the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. War Eagle.